Welcome to Journey Through the Innerverse. I am really happy and excited about our topic tonight. We are going to be talking about the life and works of Carl Jung. And of course, there is so much to share about Jung. We're not going to get, we're nearly going to skim the surface of his story, his connection and influence within the dream realm. But we're going to do our best to just what share some significance in his impact on the dream space. And firstly, before we get into our chat tonight, I just want to check in, Alexis, and see how you're doing tonight.
I am doing pretty good. I definitely have been affected from what I realized, what you had told me was fires up in Canada, because I had like a mild sinus migraine all day, which was kind of not fun. I was trying to explain, I was like, it feels like someone's put their hand in my skull and like grabbed the bottom of my brain and just is squeezing it.
Ooh.
But but other than that, I feel pretty good and I'm excited for this topic. It's very exciting to be here. How are you?
I'm feeling I'm feeling the full moon, I feel like. So one, I'm at the other end of the smoke and terrible air quality of the Canadian wildfires, which is incredibly just like unfortunate. And it's like I don't recall it happening last year, but maybe it did. But I believe it was 2023 where it was really, really bad. And so I'm like, is this the loopiness of all the toxins and, just everything like the trapped atmosphere? Because even tonight, the past 3 nights, basically the moon has been orange. I mean, like blood orange. You would look
Orange here
outside
too.
and think that there was an eclipse. So
Yeah.
let's factor that in. And then we have an coming full moon happening, right? So there is a full moon coming forth in a couple days in Aquarius. And so I'm definitely feeling the like mad scientist, just like very heady, restless energy happening. And literally I shared a video on Instagram today where I'm just like, I'm restless. Like I can't sit still. I literally changed my outfit like 3 or 4 times today. I'm all over the place. And so that's where I'm at right now. And I really feel that it's in alignment with our conversation tonight, as I, of course, had to pull Carl Jung's charts. And he has an Aquarius rising, which Aquarius to me is always like, I get the archetype of the mad scientist. And I'm starting to see a trend with people who have Aquarius risings. They're very, like, it's almost like the Scorpio energy, but like very cerebral. So they
Yeah.
like want to go really deep and they're really, even out there with their perspectives. And there's this like outcast type vibe and this isolation, but it's very, very heady, as with Scorpio on the other end, it's very like emotional
Yeah.
and like deep in the body and in like the depths of like, the shadow in whatever way that comes forth for you personally. And so it's really interesting to connect with this energy. And I'm just like, am I feeling a little bit of Carl Jung's energy, where because I've been in my head today, and even the past, I would say, week of just contemplating these metaphysical ideas and like the nature of reality and existence and religion and what is consciousness and like all these really almost like existential unanswerable questions. And I feel like that's kind of like the space that Carl Jung had potentially been in since he was a young child. So I'm really excited for this chat tonight. And just to speak, I spoke briefly on the cosmic climate that we're in. But as I mentioned, there's a full moon coming in Aquarius. So again, that Aquarius energy is very strong. And then also, um, Mars just moved into Libra right now. And whenever I feel like Libra energy activated, I get this experience of extremes where there's like a need to like balance the scales in some way in your life. And that's something that came up for me personally, as like a week or so ago, I had an experience with seeking balance in my life as far as abundance. And I revisited my tarot readings and my journaling around like, finding the balance within abundance and within my reality. And so that could possibly be some influence of Mars and Libra. Like we might first experience our reality in extremes. And it's like, what actions can we take to find balance, to find peace within those extremes or within the perceivable chaos? And so maybe this is right in alignment with Carl Jung, as he had a lot of time to contemplate the nature of existence and so many things. So we're going to get into that.
In regards to the Aquarius full moon that's approaching, I definitely am getting a lot of energy of that. That being my natal moon, it's really pulling up emotions, but also just that very atmospheric, heady depth of ideas that you had mentioned. And, even just our conversations lately, I feel like we've been going deeper and deeper into more things than usual. Not that we don't, but it feels like it's not been so much about dreaming, but more so about like, yeah, like you said, like consciousness and existence. And it has been more existential, even talking about Carl Jung and his ideas together off camera. There's definitely been that energy. And it's very interesting to be talking about him right before an Aquarius moon and having that Aquarius energy come through. I did try to dream about him, but I didn't try hard enough. Like I was like, I'm gonna try, and then I like kind of thought about it, and then I like for the next 2 nights I just forgot. So that's on me. But my dreams nonetheless have been pretty interesting, and yeah, I completely feel that energy from the Aquarius full moon, and I'm excited to see it. Not that I'm excited for wildfires, but the effects that, the particles in the air have on how we see outside of our atmosphere. It's really interesting. And I feel like I'm hoping that it kind of holds on to that yellowy orangey tone, because when I saw it last night, it was gorgeous. Like as devastating as everything is, that was beautiful to see. Um, Not that I want that, but I feel like you know what I mean with this.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
it's not like I'm excited that there are wildfires. It's just it's so insane. I mean, it's like oil in a puddle of water on the surface of a parking lot is absolutely breathtaking with that rainbow like sheerness to it, but it's not great.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I'm really feeling that, and it's definitely coming in not so much as like you said, the Scorpio energy is very deep in emotion and depth, and I feel like there's a lot of darkness and shadow like you mentioned. So what we're experiencing isn't really like around fear and darkness, not darkness, but fear and um yeah, dark aspects of life. With Aquarius, it's lighter. Like it's
Mhm.
still weird, it's still deep and atmospheric, but it's not as heavy as
It's like
Scorpio
more
from
detached, where it's like
yes.
outside like of
Yes.
yourself and like you and then everything else.
Yes,
Like it's
absolutely.
literally, when I think about Aquarius, I think about like for Aquarius, the Aquarius archetype essentially is like the medium, is the channel, which makes so much sense with Carl Jung, because with that Aquarius rising, I always get the sense that they are like the medium between humanity and the celestial, right? And so it would make sense that they have that cosmic consciousness and connection, like being the bridge between the two. And so, I mean, again, you just can't make this timing up as far as like, oh my gosh, there's a Aquarius full moon. Like right now, the moon is in Capricorn.
Right.
So it's probably halfway through Capricorn at this point, and we're recording Wednesday, August 6th, 2025, I should just say. And yeah, and so there's still like we're in this space of boundaries, and which is perfect because what we're going to be talking about tonight is like as far as Carl Jung, he was able to like categorize or really kind of distinguish the different archetypes and the personality types. And also that includes like the introvert, extrovert energies. Like, so there is some sort of structure and mechanism, but there is also the element of expansion, which is the difference between Capricorn and Aquarius. And this is why I really like the traditional perspective of like, okay, Aquarius is ruled by Saturn, but I can see the connection between Capricorn and Aquarius as there is like an evolutionary experience of, okay, here's the structures of society, and this is what will help to help society grow and evolve and mature. And then taking that next step into Aquarius is where we're like, okay, we're going to step outside of the structure or the box and create something that's more inclusive and expansive. And that is kind of boundless, but there's still like, it's like the ability to balance like order and chaos, right? To have it like, you know, have that experience and harmony basically, which also we bring in the Libra archetype. So like the time is so perfect for this conversation.
It really is. Like you can even bring that aspect of balance of chaos and like, stability and peace and stuff. It's that's represented in our day-to-day existence is the balance of chaos and
Mm,
peace. And there is always going to be like I almost feel like there's always going to be a perfect amount of each to balance out that scales. Like sometimes the pendulum swings, but we're always going to end up in the same like place.
exactly. I definitely agree with that. With that said, Alexis, do you want to share about Dreamigos?
Yes, I would. So, if you're new to the channel, if you're new to seeing us in the podcast, Dreamigos is a dream recording app. It's really cool. Urania and I both are not only on it, but experts on it as well. You can record your dreams in a multitude of different ways, and you have the option to either choose to have your dream private or public on our Dreamline. That gives you the opportunity to get some guidance and support from the dream experts like Urania and I. You can get this app on the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store, and you might have one of us commenting on your dreams if you do.
Awesome. And the link for that will be in the description of this video, along with the link to register for my upcoming class this Sunday, August 10th, on overcoming nightmares and anxious dreams. So, this class essentially is for you if you often wake up from disturbing or anxious dreams, if you experience recurring nightmares, or you desire to feel more connected and not fearful of your sleep. As I mean, on like pretty much every moon cycle, there's like half the month I'm having anxious dreams, or maybe like a week of the month I'm having anxious dreams, and I've witnessed my own pattern. And so, knowing that I have a pattern, also understanding how to interpret these dreams, maybe why they surface during this specific time, helps me to not be, I'm not afraid of my dreams anymore. I'm not afraid of sleep. I'll be honest, I tend to dread when those times come up because I'm like, oh, like I know I'm about to have a bunch of anxious dreams, or maybe I have a lot going on. So I know that's going to reflect in my sleep time, but knowing that gives me like it empowers me essentially. So if you're experiencing that, this class is for you. I will share with you how I personally have been able to empower myself in the dream space and bridge the gap between the sleep and the waking life. So if you want to register or learn more about this class, you can do so in the description, in the link via the description of this video. Let's get into Carl Jung. So I feel that most of you listening, watching this video are familiar with Carl Jung. If you're familiar with dreams or psychology, depth psychology specifically, you're familiar. But just for those of you who aren't, Carl Jung was born in 1875. He was a Swiss psychiatrist and author, noted as being an outstanding influence in the development of theory and the practice of analytical psychiatry, dream interpretation, synchronicity, and personality types, including extrovert and introvert, also known for the individuation process and the personal and collective consciousness. So during 1913 and 1914, he had numerous visions, and Jung stated in his autobiography, Memories, Dreams, and Reflections, that all of his creative work came from these initial visions, fantasies, and dreams. Also, he was famously known for his correspondence with Sigmund Freud during the years of 1907 to 1913. And their split marked a major turning point in depth psychology, with Freud continuing to develop psychoanalysis and Jung forging his own path with analytical psychology, placing dreams, symbols, and individuation at the heart of his work. More specifically, Carl Jung revolutionized the way we understand dreams, viewing them not as random images, but as meaningful messages from the unconscious. He introduced concepts like the archetypes, the shadow, and the collective unconsciousness, showing how dreams guide us toward wholeness and self realization. His work continues to inspire deep psychological and spiritual approaches to dream interpretation today.
Carl Jung was, even from the beginning of his life, like as a young child, was a very interesting person, and his actual like family around him definitely had a huge influence on the way he thought and the direction in which he went professionally. As a child, he had a lot of intense dreams, and would go deeper into it at his young age, not just like older, when he entered into the psychology aspect, but when he was a kid, um, and spent a lot of time alone, very connected to himself, which I think plays a huge role too in his interests. What I find really interesting is that a lot of his family were in like religious sects or like sects or like had connections to religion in a pretty like significant way. Both his father and his maternal grandfather were Protestant ministers, who had special interests in Hebrew. And then 8 of his uncles were parsons. So that right there is just a lot of religious influence to have at such a young age. I mean, everybody almost was involved within the religious community. And, when you're brought up with that, you have a lot of thoughts, and your life is kind of guided in one way or the next by that. Another aspect was his grandfather, who he actually was named after, being a physician who had a high placement in the University of Basel, and was a Grand Master of the Swiss Freemasons, which also has its weird ties to like how he was brought up. Not only that, but both his mother and his maternal grandmother were described as having psychic abilities. So the influences of the family are so weird and rich and interesting, and you know it really makes sense the direction he went in his life and his work and his views on everything he did. I really I just the amount of influence from the family members alone like blew my mind when I read that.
That makes so much sense, because with him having an Aquarius rising, the Aquarius archetype is the occult. It's the occult sign. And again, you have all of these specific traditions. You have the Freemasons, you have these Christian sects. And so they're within these like spiritual or religious cults, there's the structure. But then with Carl Jung, he literally had to go outside of the structure. There's still a connection to that, but there's like a fringe and outskirt, like marginalized aspect to look at that from, or to experience that from. Like, I'm sure as a young child, especially having a lot of alone time and a lot of contemplation and just connection with nature and just whatever was going on in his own psyche, because there were even, some people even honestly thought that he was schizophrenic. Like they thought that he had some sort of mental imbalance within himself that also drew him to psychiatry. And it's interesting because he was able to, get outside of that, but he still kind of had that same framework. Which, I mean, I don't want to make this all about astrology, like an astrology analysis, but this is what I'm saying, the difference of like Capricorn and Aquarius, where their Capricorn is that tradition, and like Aquarius has a little bit of that structure, but it's in its own fringy different way. So it's innovative. It's breaking through the traditional norms, and you can see at a young age that he was already doing that even within, the culture that he grew up in. He still had an essence of that connection to spirit, but it was in his own way, and it was through the mind, which is also an Aquarius, trait.
Absolutely. And to bounce right off of that, Aquariuses are known for their rebellion, but reality is that people who have Aquarius, I feel like, are just very intelligent. Not that other people aren't, but I feel like there's a type of intelligence where they're the observer and they can kind of like analyze a situation and put into boxes what feels right and what feels wrong based on what other people are doing, and deciding for themselves what they want to go, their own moral compass and their own ideas of existence and how to move through it. I mean, something I find very interesting about an aspect in which Carl Jung kind of created a more balanced outlook on the unconscious, the conscious, the dream realm, and whatnot. One of the aspects that I feel led him to this balance is watching his father, who loved God and preached his entire life for God and religion, and showed all of this interest and support and love towards this one thing, but then on the other side being incredibly depressed and disconnected. In from a young age, Carl Jung saw this dynamic and, like, in a way was questioning what was the purpose of putting everything into that, to not even feel happiness and fulfillment from it. And I think that led to him expanding outward of these limiting beliefs, and because he doesn't separate completely from religion. In fact, he finds that, I think one of the things he talks about is how men need some type of religion. Well, humans need some type of religion per se to have a purpose. So he traveled a lot. He went to Africa, he went to India, he went to America, and hung around Native Americans and all of these other people and learned their religions and their myths, and realized that how cold and disconnected the world of science had become and how it affected the population, specifically like Europe, America. And it's his upbringing plays such a huge role. It's so interesting to think about.
He definitely was very inclusive to spirituality, and I mean that could speak to, obviously other factors in his chart. And but definitely that Aquarius energy, as I mentioned, there's still like this connection to the divine. And then we also have to think about that time period where to be Christian, to be to be a Christian, essentially, it was like do or die, right? Like you had to kind of follow that way of being, and to be open about not was blasphemy, and there were consequences in a lot of cases if you were
Absolutely.
openly, or you were just thought to be crazy,
Yeah, you were pushed aside like a lunatic. And
Yeah.
I just, again, that natural rebellion, it wasn't him doing it just because. There's the acknowledgement of what isn't working and moving away from that. And I think that's why he wasn't as popular in the world of psychology and dream work like Freud was, because Freud had a more traditional way that fit a little bit more in with society, where Jung was more out there. He was seen as more of like a mystic than taken like seriously as a psychologist and an analyst. Now, of course, he's more popular now, and had, after he had passed away, he was a part of society more. His ideas and whatnot were integrated into society after he passed away more than they were prior to.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's that in itself is very telling of the times. I mean, even his ideas of men and women, for a society where men were more important and played a role, and there was this specific way you had to be, and same with women, like you each had your box and you'd stay in that box. He kind of saw past that, especially with the patients he saw.
Well, he also saw them, those aspects of being both within us.
Yeah.
Like, so coming into union of the enema and the animus, or the feminine and the masculine, like we hold both of those archetypes, those energies within us, where in society in general, like the general consensus was that, oh, this was the role of the woman. They're supposed to show up in this way, and then this is the role of the man, and they're supposed to show up in this way. However, with Jung, it was like, well, we hold both archetypes, and the relationship, say if you're a man in your relationship with a woman, that woman is going to bring out that woman essence from within you, and your masculine essence is going to, or the masculine energy of the man is going to bring out the masculine essence within the woman, and that's supposed to balance each other out and really essentially activate that individuation process, in which you can come into the whole essence of yourself, masculine and feminine, and you can exist like together in your wholeness. And that's what I really enjoy about Jung's work. And I think, with in comparison to Jung and Freud, and we're definitely, after doing our research and studies and sharing just our insights with each other and our discoveries, we were like, we have to do an episode on Freud. As
Oh yeah.
anyways,
Oh
I'm not gonna even like say
no.
how I feel about it, but it's like we kind of tiptoe around Freud. But no, I was really surprised to learn that, as far as in the field of psychology, Freud is definitely a prominent like figure. And I was shocked. I was like, oh, really? And so it's worthwhile to explore, Freud and his relationship to dreams. And then we're going to have an episode on both of them. So stay tuned for that. But nonetheless, Freud was more on leaning on the scientific side, and Jung was more intuitive and, you can say, spiritual. And it's really interesting because what I have witnessed and experienced when I come across Jungian analysts, or just even doing dream work, and I'm studying and I come across any Jungian perspective, I've learned to translate, say, the archetypes. So the archetypes, essentially, when you think about the archetype of like a dream symbol, that essentially means like the spiritual nature, the spiritual meaning of a dream symbol. So I'm like, oh, the archetype, which I like to use that word for signs when I'm talking about astrology, because it's like that essence, that divinity, that pure nature of like the sign. What does that archetype mean? So it's like an expression like of creative energy, or expression of a certain essence. And so when it comes to Jungian psychology, or depth psychology, from the Jungian perspective, the archetype is that spiritual nature. And so I've learned to kind of decipher, what is happening here. So it's just really interesting, because I'm like, back then, Carl Jung was more spiritual, but now I feel like Carl Jung is like a little bit more scientific than spiritual, like these in modern times. So that's really
I
interesting.
definitely feel like he has a balance. I think that's why I like his way of thinking so much, because it is so balanced. It's almost like disgustingly balanced. And speaking of astrology, I kind of want to bring this up because he has Jupiter in Libra in the ninth house, which
Mm-hmm.
explains so much the expansiveness of that, like, uh, I can't, like, it's the expansiveness of the balance
And that's the
throughout
dream house too.
the dream house, but the expansiveness of the balance and the dreams, his ideas, and then I just, it's, when you look at his work and you look, okay, he sees balance in men and women. He sees balance in the way that we function and move through life. That I'm eating
And
this shit up. Like
I
being a
am
Libra
going
stellium, I'm like,
to
this is amazing.
so so you watching the video version right now, I just pulled his chart up so you can get an idea. And if you look at his chart, if you're looking at this screen, he literally has like there's a few houses. There are four houses that he doesn't have anything in. Four out of the 12. So I would say that he's got a little bit of everything. He's got his fire, he's got his air, he's got his earth, his water. He's got a Aquarius rising. His sun is in Leo. His moon is in Taurus. So he definitely has the activated fixed energy. So there is the lean towards the structure and the patterns, and that fixed nature, the grounded energy of things, with that Aquarius rising, as we were talking about, like that outcast energy, and just like his soul's essence is to be the medium, is the channel between the cosmic or celestial consciousness and the human collective consciousness, which that's what he's known for, is the collective unconsciousness, our understandings, our psychology, our theories around the unconscious. Is like he is the foundation of those theories and the understandings
Yeah.
around that. And then you have the moon in Taurus, which is the moon is exalted in Taurus. And so what that means essentially is that the moon is like it can function at its highest vibration. It's fully supported. And so there is a nice structure and now nice foundation to connect with all the emotions, all the sensations, like that intuitive ability. There's um just like a grounded, supportive balance to it. And it's in the fourth house, which deals with family, home, and that ancestral connection. So there's something there in reference to these deep familial roots and this intuition, and the intuition connected to the sensations and physical realm. And it's conjoined with Pluto, by what, like 8 degrees, I think is what that is. And so that's an interesting connection too, is like Pluto and the moon. Talk about
Oh
the
yeah.
unconscious in the fourth house. So it's making that unconscious energy very like tangible,
Oh yeah.
like bringing that whatever's in the subterranean realm, it's bringing that up into like a physical manifestation with Neptune there. Like,
Yeah.
his chart. And I should have placed a lot of emphasis on the house, and this actually makes sense, like thinking about this. But I just want to say that his chart, as far as the rating of his chart, and this is when you really get into astrology and chart interpretation. His rating, the source of his birth time is essentially unknown. um and so we kind of want to take the rising sign in the areas of life with a grain of salt. However, just in what we discussed, I'm like, wow, this really resonates, right?
It really
um it
does.
really does. And the thing that draws me, that you know bothers me, is that his ascendant is at 1 degrees of Aquarius. And so that's right on the cusp that he could be a Capricorn if he was born, a few minutes earlier. Like, I'm sure within like 10 minutes or so, he probably would have been a Capricorn rising, and that would shift things a bit. But I really feel the Aquarius. Like, I'm gonna go
Oh,
with
for
it. You
sure.
know what I mean? And that's what everyone uses, is this birth time. And it's very specific. It's 7:24. So, I mean, I don't know where they got the birth time from, but that's like usually when it's an ambiguous time, it's like 7:30, 8 a.m. You know what I mean? So
Absolutely. And you know something about his chart too is it seems to be very balanced with the elements.
yeah, it is balanced with the
It's a
elements. You're
very
right.
balanced with the elements, and I feel like, you know, there's something to be said about how he felt that like life was like a continuous like pattern of metamorphoses, and how I just it's sorry, I keep getting really wrapped up and excited about it because when you come across people who are very grounded, but have like connection to all aspects of themselves and explore a balanced path of everything in existence, it's just like, I don't know, it's refreshing. That's the word
Yeah.
I'm looking for. It's very refreshing to come across someone in the public eye who has done a significant amount of work for the or psychology community and science community and dream work community, because a lot of the times people who make big achievements in society, they don't they can be, I don't want to say they can be a disappointing person, but they can kind of be a disappointing person. Like even like
Well, yeah, he has that humility. Like
yeah,
that's
he
kind of we
has
were talking about
humility.
before, which is definitely, I feel, a Libra trait in some sense. Like you'll see like in videos and stuff, the stereotypes of Libra, like I'm the baddest bitch, I'm this, I'm that. But personally, like aside from Kim Kardashian, like when I meet the Libras that I know, they are, and I'm not saying she's not, but I guess I am. But anyways, they're very humble. They're very just like it ain't about me, it's about the people that I care about. You know what I mean? And so I'm sure there are things to say that people would say about Young, like such as like his role in relationships. But you know what? His partners knew about each other. Like,
Yeah.
from what I understand, there was nothing shady happening. He was living in his nice Aquarian polyamorous experience. Like, we don't know
Yeah.
his business like that, but we
Yeah.
know that they knew about each other. It was a very open, experience. Like, his open relationship was a dynamic. And so, there, when it came to his work and his influence on society, he was very humble about it, and he was very respectful to the ones that he cared about, from what
Yeah.
I've seen.
Oh yeah, I mean you have people like, we watched this wonderful 3-part documentary. I think it's, you said it was 6 parts, but we watched 3 parts of it. And people who knew him would talk about how, if he did have his moments where he, you know, was overwhelmed or lashed out or whatever, he would immediately think about what he did and correct and kind of like apologize and take responsibility and accountability for his actions. And he was very aware of himself and he was very aware of others. And he was definitely had a lot of humility with
Yeah,
his walk of life.
he definitely did. So I want to talk about his significant impact on dreams. Of course, this is Journey Through the Universe. So we're going to talk about dreams. And there was one dream, well, many of his dreams, as I mentioned, he allowed his dreams to inform him, and of what to do in life. Specifically, was a dream in which he that helped him to make a decision on what college career path he wanted to follow,
Yep.
which pertaining to, was it archaeology? No, was it archaeology
I
or
think it was architecture.
anthropology? No, it's anthropology and science. And so he went with anthropology and science. He went the science route.
Mm-hmm.
But most importantly, his most significant dream was the dream that he had that helped him to derive the theory of the collective unconsciousness. And this was a series of dreams. However, I'm going to read one dream that was shared in this documentary that really helped him to fully grasp the concept of the collective unconsciousness. So I'm going to share that dream right now. So, from Carl Jung's recollection, I was in a house I did not know it was my house. In the upper story, there was a kind of salon furnished in Rococo style. I did not know what the lower floor looked like. There, everything was much older. This part of the house must date from the 15th or 16th century. The furnishings were medieval, the floors were red brick. I went from one room to another, thinking, now I really must explore the whole house. I came upon a heavy door and opened it. The stone stairway led down into the cellar, descending again. I found myself in a beautifully vaulted room which looked exceedingly ancient. The walls dated from Roman times. The floor was of stone slabs, and in one of these I discovered a ring. The stone slab lifted, and I saw a staircase of narrow stone steps leading down. I descended and entered a low cave. In the dust were scattered bone and broken pottery, like remains of a primitive culture. I discovered two human skulls, obviously very old and half disintegrated. Then I woke up. So, from this dream and a series of additional dreams, Carl Jung was able to derive his theory of the collective unconsciousness in the sense that the collective unconsciousness basically is considered to be a reservoir of human instincts, of images, of stories, and basically of symbols that are considered to be the archetypes. So kind of like if you are familiar with I guess metaphysical philosophy or philosophy in general, we have the universals. So there are these like main groups of things, right? And so the universals are within our collective unconsciousness, so to speak. So there's like a main way to categorize things. And that collective unconsciousness, whatever consciousness is, and this is when we really get into metaphysics, questioning the nature of reality, existence, and consciousness. It's like, is consciousness the soul? What is it? But nonetheless, it is the collective memory, it's the collective reservoir of existence. And we have access to that in the dream space. And even when you think about mythology, when you think about stories, when you think about gods and goddesses, yes, in Greek religion and Roman religion, pagan tradition, we have different names for them, but you will start to see the similarities. Like the similarities are similar, right?
Yeah,
But there are like subtle differences throughout the cultures, but the essence of it is still the same. And that essence is that universal energy. And
absolutely.
that was what Carl Jung was able to really perceive and make tangible through his series of dreams.
Absolutely. And even, it is so helpful to understand at this point what is collective unconscious within our dream space and what isn't. Because there's a lot of energy moving around and you tap into that collective unconscious. If you don't know that it's a collective conscious, you think it's yourself. You think it's part of you, and you think there's no determination of you being separate from it. Like even though you're not separate, you're a part of it. It's not your personal experience alone. It's everyone's. And so, a lot of apocalyptic dreams are considered the collective unconscious because of a similar fear that universally we all kind of have. And it's so interesting to be aware within the dream space when that's happening. Like to be able to bypass the collective unconscious dream space and kind of continue on recognizing what is your personal experience. It's very interesting and very very profound in its own sense. But yeah, that was you covered so much of the basis around the collective of conscious and really explained really well.
And you know what's interesting too is that when you experience it in the dream space, you have these, what we would even consider the archetypal images or the collective unconscious like archetypes that we experience them like individually, like we all have our individual
Yeah,
relationships. Like one of the things for whatever reason that's coming to mind is owls. Like we all, most of the time when we think about owls in more of an archetypal expression, which, again, like I said, that translation basically is like the spiritual expression, is like the wise bird, like a wise energy, mysterious, nocturnal, you know. And so when we see that in our dreams, like with that archetypal meaning, we then reflect on our own personal connection with that, right? And so that bird would show up as like he would consider that to be an archetypal symbol. There's like that meaning, there's a personal meaning, and then maybe there is, I mean, I don't know if there would be what for lack of a better word, a secular meaning to an owl.
Right.
When I would see any kind of animal, I would default to their archetype.
Well, even some cultures see owls as a bringer of bad news, something that's more on the negative side, and like, snakes or something like that. The great serpent, the it brings forth some fear to an extent collectively, but also you have to think about the what the snake does. The snake sheds its skin over and over and over again, and it represents that continuous changing process of the self, that metamorphosis. And even just equating the fear that it brings up with the lack of understanding of the self and metamorphosis and change. So there's a lot to be said about recognizing those archetypes within the collective and personal unconscious.
Yeah, and that is a perfect example of how the collective unconscious evolves, right? How stories evolve, how myths and perspectives evolve, and how they then influence us personally. So, before a certain period, snakes were looked at as, a source of wisdom, a source of power, a source of healing. And then at some point, that got distorted a bit and it became like this very like bad omen type symbol. And now where we are, it's kind of like in the in between, but it's definitely moving more back into the empowerment aspect and healing aspect in connection to wisdom and cycles and metamorphoses. And so, these myths and stories transform over time. And, if you are someone who, like if you're a dream worker, or even if you pay attention to your own dreams and you share them with others, once you do that over a certain period of time, you can see through the groups. And this is why it's so important to share dreams, because you can really see the patterns and the evolution and the cycles of these archetypal symbols. And that's why, I really enjoyed learning about Carl Jung's like international travel,
Yes.
and talking to different indigenous groups about their dream experiences, because he did go to South Africa at one point. And when he started coming there to talk about dreams, they were really excited. And then they also expressed that, ever since the white man, like since they were colonized, basically, they stopped having their dreams. But before that, dreams were very important and they received a lot of messages and guidance. And even knowing when to hunt, what to hunt at certain periods of time, like they were able to discern that and get that guidance through their dreams. And then there was a certain period where that was all, that dissolved essentially. And it has this, it happened as a result of a cultural shift. And so you can really get a sense of where we are in our um, human evolution through dream, interpretation and analysis.
Absolutely. And you can see those shifts too, just like acknowledging like ancient cultures and religions, and then more, I want to say cold, rigid religions coming in and kind of taking over, and how that alone, those restrictions, those limitations were put in place for humans, and the connection with the self was kind of disconnected, and how that has evolved and changed with the dream space and the way that we connect, even the way we connect with dreams in general. I mean, not a lot of people talk about them. Not a lot of people engage in the topic of dream work. Not a lot of people even allow themselves to remember their dreams. Whether it's purposeful or not, there's an aspect of themselves that they're cutting out in order to not remember those dreams. And so looking at the evolution of dreaming and the archetypes that are intertwined with the personal unconscious and the collective unconscious, and like you said, where we are in human evolution, it's captivating. And it also lays itself out as lessons. We're getting to a point now where I feel as though we're understanding how important it is to be connected with the self, be connected with all that exists, and not as disconnected and looking for that outside validation. So I feel like more people are moving towards the path of paying attention to their unconscious, their dreams, how they're feeling, going deeper into integrating that shadow self rather than ignoring and neglecting it. And I'm seeing a societal shift over just even the last like 5 years. It's definitely, and who's to say that COVID didn't jumpstart that for us too? You know,
I mean,
it's
I know a lot of people are having dreams about extraterrestrials. That's something that's been coming up. And who knows, that could just be in my reality because I'm like calling it in. I'm like, yeah. And then people are like, oh, I had this dream. Um, and then there's also a lot of like apocalyptic type dreams. I mean, and like, yes, that's something we always tend to have because just the nature of the reality that we live in. But I feel that I've been hearing a lot more about it. Even if it's dreams about like from decades ago, like I'm still hearing about them like now they're starting to come up and I'm like,
oh for
this is
sure.
interesting. And it's like again, you can just see the way we're like our evolution is going through these different dreams. Like for instance, since I've been getting more into dream work and working with others and sharing, like I have no problems talking about sexual dreams. Like I'm someone who actually seeks those dreams out, not as much anymore, but you can also see how collectively, those dreams can feel kind of untouchable or people are like tiptoeing around them or it's hard to share them or we don't know where to go with interpreting them, whether it's like we personally might be comfortable, but then when it comes to like counseling someone who's having that dream, it's like, okay, so where do we start with this? And that'll be a good one for Freud's video,
Yes.
for Freud's chat. But like that's a perfect example of like getting a read on the collective unconscious and where we are as a whole, in reference to our primal instincts of sexuality, of desire, of ecstasy. Because one of the things that I really like that Carl Jung mentioned is that if we neglect our instinctual desires, we will still satiate that desire, but it's going to come out essentially in a way that he called it symptomatic. The way I translated that essentially is distorted, right? And so we
Absolutely.
get the war, we get the distorted aspects of like sexuality and how, just the nature of how that can be distorted and very like inappropriate, and immoral. And so, we can really gauge where we are again, once again, just looking at the collective unconsciousness and really sharing our dreams. It's really important to talk about dreams because the unconscious, essentially what Carl Jung said is that the unconsciousness is it can possibly be the human soul, and that human soul essentially is buried treasure. Like there's so many
Yeah.
gems within the unconscious which can be analogous to the human soul, and that collective unconsciousness is the collective soul. And so, in order to really gain access, and this is something I feel so strongly about since I've got into intentional dream work, is like you really want to get to the bottom of things for yourself, for the collective, you need to do the dream work. You need to go into the
Yeah.
dream realm. Like
Yeah.
that's the
And
real shadow work.
there's something too to be said about having to do the work for yourself in order to help the collective. It's like, you work on your own mental health so you have the ability to aid others. Whereas like if you ignore yourself, it's just kind of like fermenting. And it's so interesting I feel like I'm using that word a lot tonight, but I just can't help
It's
myself.
interesting.
It's very thought provoking and captivating and profound. But the collective unconscious and even just the way we, you know, put ourselves out there consciously, and how, when you think of the unconscious is in a way lacking an aspect of the ego where like things aren't filtered in, it's just raw. Where like when you're conscious, you have your ego that's filtering everything, and making sure that you say the things that you want to say, and appear the way that you want to appear. And that gold mine of the unconscious, that rawness, is so important for navigating that waking ego, and almost like trying to harness it in a way, because our ego helps us to fit in with the collective. But we
Yeah,
have to get to a point where we're just ourselves.
exactly. No, so beautifully said.
Thank
And
you.
this is interesting. So this is when we get into the metaphysical aspect of things and questioning the nature of consciousness, the nature of existence. And it's like, so Carl Jung, believed, or his perspective was that mythologies have came about from the unconscious mind. So if this is the case, like these stories, what is consciousness, and does consciousness essentially predate humanity in a sense? And this is like, I
Easily
mean,
could.
this is yes, this is an answer that of course I'm not going to say we'll never, because I don't want to create that limitation, but it's like, will we ever have the answer? And one of the questions that was presented in the documentary that we watched, which we'll share here on our channel, is one of the things is our life, our existence, a myth, right? And they were talking about that in the documentary, how we tell these stories like throughout our lives, we share them, we live them, and you can think about it even on a very personal level. And I speak about this a lot, that pay attention to the narratives, the stories that you say about yourself, about your actions, about your feelings, about your life. Like, this is your own myth, right? This is
Yes,
your own mythos, and we have our own mythos, like on a collective scale. And so essentially, yes, our life, our existence is a myth. And it's like a lot of that story that we're telling, that we're feeling into, a lot of those energies are held within the unconscious. And I do feel that we as humans, in the way we're conditioned at this point, we tend to lean into like the fear and the like repressed emotions, even though we don't want to talk about it. Those traumas, those experiences are definitely still coming up and being fed to us through the unconscious, and they're like in the stories that we're sharing. And so this is again why it's really helpful to pay attention to your dreams and to record
absolutely.
them and to share them, because when you start to see that and you begin to make the connections between your dreaming world and your waking world, and take it a step further and start to make the necessary actions and take heed to the guidance, then you'll start to see the changes in your waking world, and you'll start to see the changes in your dreaming space, and it all becomes like just this beautiful, like integrated experience. And then at that point you begin to feel that you have like creative power, essentially, like in your life, in your
Absolutely.
mythos. And like I
Absolutely.
really feel that connection with Carl Jung.
Absolutely. I agree completely. You know, where you put your energy is going to be where you end up going. And it's not an easy task to realign yourself in a direction that you need to be in. It is not an easy task. It requires a lot of work, a lot of patience, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of grace. But the freedom that you feel when you are able to finally shift, because it takes time. Say you go the route of therapy, like the first couple of years, I tell everyone the first couple of years of therapy is going to be like hell, because you are now tapping into a part of yourself that you yourself unconsciously or subconsciously hid from yourself in order to survive as a protection. But now you're jumping into the waters, and those waters are deep. So, like the first couple of years of therapy, I tell people all the time, it's going to be really hard because you're not used to allowing yourself to be hurt again, re-traumatized. But once you start to move through it, you begin to see the shifts. The shifts in yourself, the shifts in the way you feel, the shifts in how you see the world. And when you come out the other side, you have a better understanding of how to navigate the highs and the lows together. And you're still going to have a hard time, but it's going to be a different, more complimentary experience. You like go with the punches of life, and you pick yourself up and you figure out how to A, avoid dealing with that again, or B, with things that are unavoidable, just how to let yourself move through it. So it's very complex, and it's very profound, and it's beautiful. And again, I agree that that's why I love the work of Carl Jung.
And I really see after sharing all of this, I'm like, yeah, he definitely has. I see the moon conjunct Pluto. And it's
Mm-hmm.
so beautiful that it's in Taurus because there's just a very like safe, like I feel like his own, so here's my perspective without not getting too deep into this, but my perspective on astrology is that we essentially choose our time to come into this life, right? We choose the day, the location, the year, and like the whole chart is a map, right? It's a blueprint of our purpose and challenges and what we strive to achieve and so forth. And I really see that intention in his Pluto and moon placement because it's so like there's such a safe space created that he created for himself to explore the unconscious, to be able to bring that into the physical and make it some sort of like in some tangible way. And then Pluto's there or Neptune's there, it's a little bit more distant, but it's there co-present. So and like the role that I give to Neptune in astrology is that it really helps us move beyond like the boundaries of consciousness. Like it is the essence or the energy there that gets us really thinking about what is the nature of reality and what's really real. And so he has that in Taurus, and so Taurus is giving, again, there's that balance. Taurus is giving him the balance of like having that very grounded, like needing that reliability and security type energy. But then you have the moon, Pluto, and Neptune all there in Taurus. So it's like, all right, I need as much grounding energy as I can get while I really explore the depths of like what we have no, like the depths of existence, of consciousness, of the soul. And so it makes so much sense, and of the dream realm. And so I just really admire Carl Jung for his explorations, for his studies. And I was telling Alexis when we were doing research, listening to documentaries, listening to his audio book or his audio biography, Memories, Dreams, and Reflections. And I was like, it was brought to my attention that they mentioned, oh no, it was in the podcast episode we listened to, a different podcast, and they had mentioned how like he's not really known for like that he was literally a psychiatrist. He worked very closely with schizophrenic patients, like people who experience schizophrenia, and not a lot of people talk about that. A lot of people talk about his work as far as developing the four personality types, as well as like of course his connection to dream work, but they didn't really go into the fact that he was a psychiatrist. And I feel like that was also, the way it was described and presented, like from himself too, where that was like part of, like, he was curious about it, but it was also the work that paid the bills too. And like his deep passion was in like journeying within the unconscious and like
Right.
just the mystery of that. So I mean, we can go on and on and on about Carl
Well, we're
Jung.
gonna have to do a part
We're
two.
gonna have to do a part two.
We're gonna
We're
have to
gonna
do a
have a
part
part
two.
two with
Yes.
Freud, and then we're gonna have another part two or part three with just him.
Yep.
But we didn't touch much on his connection and expression of visual arts and creative expression of the dream. which we're gonna do we're gonna have an episode, a live chat next week on visual expression of dreams and how you can utilize that in your dream journaling, your dream recording, and how it can be incredibly profound. And Alexis is an incredible artist. I'm gonna admit I've been using AI to it was an offer to like create little images for just select dreams that I've had. So we're gonna share about that. But it makes sense. He had a Leo sun and he has other placements in Leo. And so yeah, he really was like a pioneer in recommending like dance and art as a way of like healing, as therapeutic healing.
Absolutely. And his work is really interesting. A lot of it is based around like shapes, colors, mandalas, his, again, like people in his dreams. And I'm so excited to talk about that next week. I have a very, very personal relationship with my dream work and art, and it shows up in so many ways. And I have so many pieces of art that are directly influences by what I see or experience within the dream space. And it really just brings a more tangible visual understanding to the world of what you are seeing within your unconscious. So I'm so excited, and thank you so much, Urania. I appreciate your compliments.
Yeah, it's amazing to bring your dream to life, as you can imagine, like as a visual. So I'm really excited for that discussion next week. So definitely join us live for that. I think we did a pretty good job in this chat. I don't know. Again, there's so much to talk about.
There's
So
gonna
we're
be
definitely gonna have more
more.
parts. If you all have any questions or if there's some specifics regarding Jung that you would like us to speak on, definitely share with us in the comments or feel free to email us at the innerverse podcast at gmail.com. And we would definitely be happy to do an episode on your suggestion. So, with all of that said, Alexis, do you have any last words or anything else that you want to share before we close out?
I'm going to give myself a task, and it is an inspired task by the learning about Carl Jung and the creative expression. But I was inspired to draw, not draw, paint out one of my more recent dream experiences. And I think I'm going to put the pressure on and get that done for next week so I can have a new a new piece
Yeah.
diving inside of my brain.
Oh
So
my goodness. That would
we'll
be
see if
amazing.
if it comes to
No
fruition. I'm
pressure, but all
I'm
the pressure.
going to do my best because it's there, and I really do want to like get it down.
Yeah, that would be amazing. Yeah, maybe I'll share some of my very special AI. I'm gonna say with AI, you have to. I was telling Alexis this, like I unfortunately have to surrender to whatever it produces because I've tried to modify it. And this is why I'm so excited to have Alexis here because it's like having that guidance and it's so important because like you can have someone or AI generate the image for you, but if you learn and actually just take, the time to create your own art, then like because no one will ever be able to see it in the way that you have seen it. Like it's just not going to
Exactly.
come out perfectly. And it probably won't come out perfectly when you do it because it's like, oh, but then this thing and this thing. So it's all an act of
Perfection is not something
surrender
you will
and
ever
it's very
achieve,
personal. Yes.
but it is
So
more I want to say grounded in your true unconscious when you do it yourself. Because I could draw something for Urania, and you know, AI and I have, AI has its aesthetic and I have my aesthetic, but there still might be something that's not
yeah,
scratching the part of your brain that is what you saw. So,
exactly. Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like what Carl Jung spoke about a lot is that our dreams come through in images and symbols. And that's the fun part of it. So I'm so jealous of artists like Alexis, where you are just inclined to being able to. I like cannot draw. Like I get very anxious about it. And we'll talk about this when in next week's chat. But um, so I think there was one dream that I actually drew, maybe, and I'm really feeling inspired to try a little bit more. But the act of doing it yourself, like that is such a powerful experience. And so I'm really excited to just talk about it and share about how amazing that is. So, yeah.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for listening. Thanks for watching. Thanks for your support. And if you aren't already following us on Spotify, please do so. Show us some love, rate the show. And if you have not yet subscribed to YouTube, but you've been listening to a couple episodes and you are enjoying the chat, please subscribe to our channel. That definitely helps us. And we will definitely be live next week. Mercury retrograde will be done and over. So hopefully you don't have to
Absolutely.
worry about any of that. But thank you everyone for being here, and we will be back next week.